let's talk about this video that came out some time ago. So they have these big sort of conversations with different people talking about all kinds of different topics, but this one was about feminism in general. And they had um, a Pearl, who's very, very popular, and some other popular YouTubers and activists. They had two trans people on the panel, which was pretty interesting. So we're going to look at the section. Hold on. We're going to look at the section where they talk about transgenderism, because the reason why I'm bringing this up, and I thought about just doing a TikTok about it, but there's more that I guess I wanted to break down this entire segment. But there's something particular. Let me like pump the brakes for a moment, because there's something I want to note. So it's so weird to me how aggressive like these trans women simps are, these females that are allies, and how angry they will get at women for saying, "Don't call me cis." Like Dylan Mulvaney is a man. If you say stuff like that, people come at you so aggressively, and not just trans women or men or whatever come at you to push back. It'll be women. There'll be women like in my comments who are so angry at me. There was someone yesterday, or the day before yesterday, they're in my comments. They're really upset about a video I did where I was going back and forth. Well, not going back and forth, but I was explaining the history of like the cisgender, and that we're not, because there was a trans woman who said, we're not trying to take womanhood away from, like, you can't take womanhood away from us. We are women, but we are concerned about, people coming into our different spaces. And so I start listing different things and had different examples of like the We Spa incident, of women getting impregnated in prisons by obviously men who identify as women. And I showed, William Thomas, Leah Thomas on the swim team. So I had different examples of women, of women being concerned about stuff. And they said this video is very transphobic. So what's transphobic about this video? Nothing's hateful. It's just like pointing out things that are true. And the reason why it was transphobic is because I'm not inclusive enough. I'm not inclusive enough because I don't want men in women's spaces. So I said, okay, do you believe that men should be in women's prisons? Yes or no? And they said, men aren't in women's prisons. And I literally had an example that I showed of the women getting impregnated by trans women. Women can't impregnate other women, unless they have like some kind of turkey baster in someone's sperm that they did not produce. So no, women can't impregnate women. Trans women are not women. That was obviously a man who did that. And yes, there are men in women's prisons. So they did the denial thing and dodged the question. And they're done with me, so I know they're not going to respond. But my question to them is like, do you believe that males should be in female prisons? Do you believe males should be in female prisons? Because I'm assuming most people would say no. And do you believe that males should play on female sports teams? And most people are going to say no. Do you believe males should be in female women's shelter? Most people are going to say no. And if you say yes, then I guess we'll just tear down every single barrier between men and women, and we'll just let them all, compete together, and let all the women lose, and, let all the spaces. Isn't it crazy that feminists were so angry about man spreading? Like, people are still mad about it. But in 2016, there were so many people complaining about man spreading. And now we have to let the men spread in our sports, in our women's shelters and prisons, etc., our spas, or else we're just terrible, bigoted people. That doesn't make any sense to me. We're living in the upside down. It's all very ridiculous. So if you don't believe that male should be in female prisons, a trans woman is just as male as every other male in the men's prison. So why should they be in the female prison? Just because you've convinced yourself that woman is so different than female? That seems a little crazy to me. That seems a little out there. Too out there for me to take. Too out there for me to take. But it's very odd that you have all these females who are, you know, they'll say they're allies, but they're an enemy of you if you're not willing to jump on the train, and they are catty and they attack. And I wonder what is the like full psychology and the reason behind this. I'd love to, I don't know, talk to Abigail Schreier or Jordan Peterson or somebody about all this, because it it's so baffling. Maybe some of it has to do with like just the basic high school kind of cattiness of girls, like the circling around like the popular mean girl sort of situation, like the biggest sort of fish or in the sea, like in Mean Girls. It was like people hated, you know, and were afraid of and despised Regina George, and but everyone wanted to be her, and you know, wanted her praise and attention. So is that what it's like when these folks, especially like young girls on apps like TikTok, rally around Dylan Mulvaney and stick up for Dylan and will fight for Dylan, even though Dylan has said he finds it more offensive to be called a man than a sexual predator. I'm not making that up. What a weird thing to say, and said he would like it to be legal to even call him a man, and has now done this reconstructive surgery, shaved down his bones and stuff. So you have people who will stand so hard from, and again, not people who are just trans. You also have other women who will come and do it as well. And it is so baffling to me. Maybe it's because they are allies on so many different social issues that they're still like, you know, coming together with the other, and this is the other that's at the height of the hierarchy. And again, just circling around and uplifting that shiny plastic mean girl, and they see who that is right now. And if you're, I don't know, the bookworm smart person who's just like facts, reality, logic, they're like nerd, and they, you know, want to tie you to the flagpole. So that's kind of what it seems like. So I want to show you this example. This video is kind of wild. So if you haven't seen it, you can watch the whole thing. It's like an hour long. They film this stuff for like hours, and they cut it down to what it is. But this is a section when they talk about transgenderism. So it's maybe I have about 7 minutes in this video. I'm sure we will talk for more than 7 minutes, pausing and stopping and commenting. But let's go ahead and watch this.
Choose. Should trans women be included in feminist conversations? How about in women's spaces?
Yes, they're women. What's the question?
Pearl,
Trans women are women.
So I want to come at this from the position of an athlete.
Oh, Jesus.
So I play semi-pro.
Wait a second. First of all, the person who said, "Oh Jesus," is a man. He's a trans woman, and he's also someone who has gotten to a big controversy because he's willing to transport like hormone drugs illegally across the country and has encouraged people to do so. So not a good person. There's also another trans person on the panel as well, and he'll talk as well, and isn't as aggressive as Eli, I think, is that his name. So saying that, oh gosh, all these folks, they talk about their experience as women, as trans women or a black women or Latina women and stuff. And so Pearl's like, I'm going to talk about my experience about sports and how it's affecting female sports as an athlete. And they're like, oh gosh. Maybe because they just know where the conversation is going, but it was just like a rude sort of blurt that I just wanted to point out before I moved on.
Basketball, semi-pro volleyball. So when it comes to like athletic spaces, I don't think that trans women should be allowed into athletic spaces because I don't think it's a fair. I think as female athletes, we work so incredibly hard for the little opportunity there is in women's sports.
Would this be a barrier for you?
There's no barrier. There's less opportunity in some industries.
That's what a barrier is.
There's less. It's not. No. No. It's
That's
based
what
on the
friction
market.
means.
Okay.
Hold
it's based
on,
it's
guys,
based-
let's-
Okay. So again, we work very hard for the
So I'm sure they brought up the barriers because they talk because I don't remember if this is before or after, but they had conversations about different barriers that men and women that women have, and Pearl's like, we don't have barriers. So her mentioning the sports, like, oh, is that a barrier? Like, no, there's just less like there is a category of female sports and you do stuff in it, but it is a smaller market. So there are less opportunities, but she doesn't have a particular barrier as a woman compared to, like, you know, the misogynist men plotting, twirling their mustaches and smoking their cigars and talking about how they can destroy women. Anyway, let's move on.
little opportunity there is in the space because we're not as entertaining as the men. Sorry, we're just not. And so it's like you're going to take the little opportunity that we're given. And the problem is, like, we can't compete. We can't. Like, I'm 6 foot. If I go up against a 6 foot guy and I play basketball with him, he's gonna body me.
And what happens if I go up against you?
Even
Hold on.
body me.
even if I have
I just want to point out that what happens if I go against you, we'll come back to that.
years more of training. And so it's like you're taking away the little opportunity that we're given and we all work so hard for, and you're just giving it back to biological guys. It's like this will be the end of women's sports.
Have you tried confidence?
Eli, hold on, Minnie.
Sorry,
Eli.
confidence can't make me bench what a guy benches.
I don't
Confidence can't
understand
make
why you
me
guys
6
are
So that's it. That's the moment. And I'm gonna go ahead and say the thing. I haven't heard anyone else mention. Maybe so someone else has, I'm sure, has had to have thought about this. The woman who said, have you tried confidence? So everybody on the panel keeps saying, as a Black woman, as a Hispanic woman, like they include their subcategories of women in their whole, like, overall experience of women. And if Pearl's like, you don't have barriers, they're like, as a Black woman, I have these barriers. Or this woman here who made the comment, she's, as a disabled woman. So she's someone who has a physical disability, and she tells a woman who is concerned about the physical advantages that men naturally have that she cannot compete with. You just can't. You can compete with some dudes, sure, but just overall you can't. Like, if you have, Venus and Serena, and you put them against the top male athletes in the tennis, they're going to get you just destroyed. And even if you keep going down on the list, like, of people who are ranked, they get bodied. That was I don't remember what number it was ranked. I think one of them went and, or they wanted him to play, and she was like, I'm not gonna do that. They know that men have just an advantage over women. Like, it's just a fact. It's just a fact. And yet she blurted out, have you tried confidence? Have you tried So she's well aware that there are some things that confidence cannot get you. And if someone had said that to her, they would be canceled. They would say that's the meanest, cruelest thing you could have ever said if someone had said that back to her. And I'm not saying that's the same thing, but I don't understand how she can't see what she said was utterly ridiculous to Pearl. Have you tried confidence? How is confidence just going to suddenly make you taller, make you faster, change your bone density? How is that going to happen? You think Leah Thomas beating all those other girls, it was because they lacked confidence? I'm sure they were concerned about going up against a guy, and they tried as hard as they could. But you can be confident. Man, a woman can be confident. Have you ever seen, like, a video where a girl, like, goes up against a dude and she's all like, she has the confidence, and then they put her in they check her real quick? There's just a power difference. There's just a power difference. And it brings me no pleasure to mention this, to bring it up, to have to bring it up. One time I was playing basketball with my friends, and one friend, and these are male friends, and I think we're maybe about the same height. And he's small, he's skinny, my friend, and he ended up knocking me down, like we ran into each other, or bumped into each other while we were playing, and I got knocked over, and I ended up sliding a little bit on my face on the asphalt, and I had like a mark on my cheek from a burn from the skid, and he was so apologetic. He felt so bad, and I was just like embarrassed that I got knocked over. Because my dad's just like, you're a bar, you can do anything. Like, and even as like a female, I'm like, I'm strong, I can do. But it was like, oh darn it, like like this dude knocked me over, and so I'm like, it's okay, it's fine. Like, you don't have to apologize. Like, I'm fine. But he really, really did feel bad. Someone who I follow, who's a detransitioner, um, she said she really, hates the fact that men are just physically superior. And so she's someone who really would train and exercise and other stuff like that. And she had a boyfriend, and he didn't do that kind of stuff, but he can, do those pull-ups and easy peasy. And it's something that, I think she could do, but he could do more of them way easier than she could. And she really trained her body and other stuff, and he was just a dude, like he just has that natural upper body strength. And she, you know ended up transitioning, and ended up detransitioning when she just had a wall with reality, where she realized, I can't deny the physical differences of men and women. So them, pretending that what Pearl is saying is so absurd, and that confidence will make all the difference in the world, is just really crazy. So why would someone like been bringing up her own physical disadvantages tell someone else to just have confidence to overcome physical disadvantages? I guess the I could say that the ideology is so ridiculous that it just makes you end up having to say ridiculous things to end up, defending it. But let's go on and continue watching.
So hostile. She's sharing her
And
experience
confidence can't make
in
me
a
sit
specific
No, she's
field.
sharing
And I'd have to
trans
go.
No, she's not. She's a woman who's had an
No, it's always-
experience.
it's always-
One at a time.
You guys
We
are
let
so
Pearl
obsessed with your
finish.
own experiences and your own existence, and yet when a woman is sitting here telling you, I feel as though this is unfair and this is compromising and this situation is not helping women, you guys are like, meh, meh, meh. But when you're like, I'm a black person that did this, 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 and this, then it's valid and fair and viable.
Eli, I want to give you the chance to respond.
So this is basically a joke of a talking point. Everyone has biological advantages in sports. How tall are you?
5'11" and a half. I'm tall.
I'm 5'8". I am a trans woman. You would crush me. You would absolutely crush
Bone
me.
density, wrist strength, muscle density, you can't switch those.
Yeah, exactly. You would crush me.
But also, Eli, you would never play at the level that Pearl plays because you would never get there.
So let me give you a few more examples here too. So Michael Phelps produced more lactic acid in his body, which caused him to swim better than any of his competitors. This was widely
I gotta say, let me go back a little bit. I love the look on her face. They just had like the perfect look. I wish they bring up Michael Phelps, like, for real, bro. Like, that's the routes you're gonna go. Let's keep listening.
of his competitors. This was widely celebrated, and nobody contested it. Now, this is a performance-enhancing hormone. So we all have different bodies. And now I'm not saying that trans women who aren't on hormones should participate, but every major medical and every major sports organization agrees that trans women who have been on hormones for between 1 and 3 years, depending on the organization, have the same competitive abilities.
The study that you're referencing had like 7 people participated.
That's misinformation, by the way. I'm referencing several different studies. I'm a trans woman and a researcher.
It's getting personal. I don't want it to be
personal. A lot of us live in this space where we're told that our opinions don't count because they're not the right kind of opinions, and we're constantly shouted over and talked over, regardless of what we look like, because there's one group in society that basically takes precedence, and it's frustrating. So yeah, of course, it's frustrating because when we
That laugh is crazy. I don't know why any person would be proud enough to laugh like that at all.
try to talk about it, we get shouted down, we get told to be quiet, we get.
I mean, she's already in her villain era, isn't she? Like, that's not even. I mean, it's not like an iconic sort of villain laugh, just so I don't know, forced with the evil snark. Maybe it's not forced, but yeah.
We get spoken down too as well. So there's hostility there for plenty of women.
Let's try to make this an opportunity to speak.
You're literally a white woman from Australia. You live in a bubble and you're pissed that voices that have been silenced forever finally can be heard.
That's why they have the voice, because they speak up.
Okay, we're having a conversation.
So I want to go back to the Michael Phelps thing and this attitude, this like, you're a white woman from Australia, and them talking about Pearl and how she has advantages, etc. Doesn't some of this kind of just seem like spite and jealousy? Like, it's fine if we kill women's sports, like Eli's, like they know there's a difference between the men and the women, and that women, it will destroy their sports. But it doesn't matter because there's physical advantages everywhere. And why should Pearl care? Why should they care about Pearl and that her field could be destroyed because she has advantages over other women? So it doesn't matter if men have advantages over her. Doesn't it seem like some petty catty female garbage? Like, you have advantages over us and other folks, therefore it's fine if someone dominates over you, or you're a white woman from Australia. So if someone comes in your space and bothers you, that's what you deserve. That's what you get, basically. So we're not gonna. So as I said, like back to the oppression Olympic hierarchy and these like mean girls centering around like their hierarchy of their dominant mean girl. It just kind of seems like they're all collectively gathering together because it feels good to bully people who they deem as not someone who's been marginalized. At one point in this, I don't have an example in this section that we're watching, but someone talked about Pearl and they're like, well, you're a pretty white woman or something. And she's like, you guys think I'm pretty? People call me ugly all the time. But it was just like a dig at her, as if she gets what she wants because of her looks. And that's not even like her, experience, because, people do talk trash about her, etc. So, it's all eye of the beholder, but she's just like, y'all think I'm pretty? Like, because that's not her experience with the trolls and folks that say, that are in her comments and stuff. Which, by the way, if someone comes at you, people online who are concerned about anyone who may come at you and make comments about your appearance and stuff, all you need is one person who likes you anyway. So what does it matter? Like what people on the internet say about you? Just like you have control over your feelings. So don't let someone else have that power to make you upset. So just wanted to throw out that random piece of advice for anyone. But so much of it just seems like we have an opportunity to punish people who we feel like in society have not been punished enough. Therefore, it's willing to ally ourselves with these other folks, even though like men are like misogynist and toxic masculinity, all this other. In any other circumstance, if they didn't grow up their hair long and put on a dress, they would say that they're like the enemy or whatever. But because they've done this and they've become part of the marginalized group, they're willing to let them be their Regina George. And they're the other catty people writing in the burn book and going after people who are like white women like Pearl, etc. And they're like, well, this is our time now. And we're going to let Dylan Mulvaney, these folks lead the way. And if you come for them, we're going to, break out our claws because they feel that they're all on the same side. Even though, as far as womanhood and the threat to women's sports are real, the threats to women in their prisons and other kind of spaces are real. It's worth it to avoid those things because at the end of the day, bullies just want they're insecure people who want power. And those are some of the most dangerous women or just people period in the world.
About transgender women participating in sports, and I wanted to allow more people to participate. Jordan, I wanted to hear from you.
So I am not a professional athlete. The closest thing I have ever done to anything athletic was I used to do competitive show choir when I was younger. And I don't feel really qualified to make carte blanche statements about whether or not trans women should compete in every kind of sport. And I understand that that is kind of, that's a hard pill to swallow. And for me, my first inclination is to approach everything through a lens of inclusivity. But at the same time, I also can't speak accurately to every kind of sport and the different things that go into it. So I really think in these instances, the decisions are best left up to the professional governing bodies that dictate these particular sports.
I just feel like in places, as an ally, in places where there's no understanding, we can just respect and not really, like, our opinions don't fucking matter.
Eli, I saw you nodding your head over there.
Several times.
So I just they'll go and they'll say that they're allies. You see this person here is very aggressive. As I said, I'll have people who come in my comments who are females. Like I can understand more like trans people coming in my comments and being very defensive. But you have females who come in and just be so aggressive against other females for feeling the way that they feel. Our choices and opinions and feelings are valid in any other situation, but not apparently in this one. I guess anytime you oppose someone else, your opinions and feelings or whatever as a woman no longer matter. They're not valid. But they call themselves allies, but they're more like just cult followers. You know, they're missionaries. They're zealots who go forward for these folks. They're like the Sparrow. Was it like Red Sparrow? Like anyone who watched Game of Thrones, like the creepy church people who took over King's Landing, and then what was their group name? What was their group name? I know there's people in the comments who watch Game of Thrones. That's kind of what they are. Like they go in and they take over, and if you don't say the right thing, they want you to walk naked in the streets with the bells saying shame, shame. You know, that's what they want you to do. If Macy Gray says, you know, men can't be women, if you're born a man, you're a man, and you have to have all these folks, activists, and even like the media. If you saw the interview when she like walked it back and said womanhood is a vibe, that it was painful. It was like pulling teeth. And how much like the media was even simping to make her walk it back. And then she changed it from men can't be women to womanhood is just a vibe. So they'll want to shame you until you comply with their ideology. And it is very religious. People talk about religious people and Christian nationalism and get so angry and upset and want, you know, say we got to get the Bible, religion out of government, separation of church and state, which people quote that every time someone quotes it, it's pretty much because they don't know what it means. But they totally are for secular people pushing their ideology on, you know, folks in the government and our lives. Everyone is religious in some kind of way. It's just what are you serving? So they call themselves allies, but they're doing the bidding of like their masters, all in the name of this hierarchy. Okay.
This is more than about sports. This is about free and equal participation for transgender people in social life. And the right sees this as a socially acceptable way to begin to remove trans people from different engagements in our society. So it does just start with sports or bathrooms or locker rooms, something that they find is more acceptable. And then at this point, they started to move into education, getting trans teachers fired, banning trans books. This is a route that is very effective because it's seen as more acceptable. But it's also overlooking a lot of major details. Like, I mean, do y'all know how many trans women have won national titles?
One too many.
One. Leah Thomas is the only one.
One too many.
One too many?
If women's sports were actually going to end in some way, I mean, it's just not happening. Wouldn't you think there would be more trans women in sports when the majority of states do allow trans women full participation? International titles, zero. No global titles have ever been won by a trans woman.
So as far as them saying trans people haven't won any national titles, we've had people who've competed now in the Olympics who are trans, and we have different major sports leagues like who've had, I mean, MMA has had trans fighters beating the crap out of women. There have been different state competitions where state championships where women who have been, you know, outcompeted by, you know, trans women. And as Pearl said, one is too many because it's a space that they don't belong in. So my thing is, though, if you have decided that that's the way that the route that you want to seek for happiness is to go ahead and go through this transformation, then either one, you seek that route and you don't go the sports route, or everybody who does go that route compete with men. Compete with men. You don't have to compete with females. The thing about sports, and I've said this before, is that it's physical. Yes, Pearl has an advantage over other women. She's 5'11". She's taller than me. I guess I wouldn't compete with her in basketball. We could play a little bit, but I'm sure she would, you know, she's just more skillful and she's taller and she's faster. And obviously I'm fat. So she would defeat me. But just because you're tall doesn't mean that you're going to be good at basketball. People told my sister that, you know, oh, you should compete. You should play basketball. She was never cut out for it. So just because you're physically, you know, have a physical advantage doesn't mean that you're going to have the mentality for it, that you're going to have the toughness for it, the mental fitness for it, that you're going to have the discipline for it. There's other factors that go into it. But yes, people do have physical advantages. And when people see certain people of a certain height, you know, whatever, if you wouldn't want someone who's Pearl's height to be like a jockey, like, you know, doing the horse racing and stuff, or her being like, if you're a gymnast, you know, you want to be like kind of on the shorter side. There's different, and your body actually does like start condensing, so you don't really grow, I guess, when you're a gymnast. So there's different physical specifications that people have to be in different sports. Like, no one is denying that sports is physical, but that's a whole entire point. That's a whole entire point. So men have too much of a physical advantage when it comes to women. So if they want to compete in the sports, if once you decide that you're going to start doing the taking different drugs, which I think that should like exclude you anyway. If they want to allow people to continue to compete, then compete with men. Everybody. Doesn't that make the most sense? Doesn't that make the most sense to folks? That makes most sense to me. Go ahead and just let them all compete with the men then. But then you wouldn't have, like, you know, Leah Thomas dominating female sports. Of course, he'd be at a physical disadvantage with the other men, but he was, you know, not winning anyway with the men, really. So of course, men who identify as women and go ahead and compete with females have an advantage. And I'm not saying that's why they transition, but there's a reason why they want to compete with them rather than compete with men. Because sports is physical. It's not about how you identify. Confidence isn't going to change anything. It's physical. That's why they make sure you're not taking anything enhancing. This is so silly. What if Lance Armstrong was like, I identify as a winner. That's why I took enhancement drugs. Because I identify as a winner and I wanted to meet that reality. Well, you can identify as a winner, but you can't take enhancement drugs. to get you to where you need to be. So having the physical advantages of a man is like taking performance enhancers. That's why Eli didn't have the same kind of mentality when it came to females who are taking, testosterone competing with females, because that's obviously a difference, and that is an enhancement that women don't have. So didn't have the same energy the other way around. Eli had mentioned that the real reason, or a big reason, why conservatives want to protect women's sports, Republicans want to protect women's sports, is to denormalize the inclusion of trans people and to push them out of like the normalization of society, etc. That's what Eli suspicion is, that this is just a gateway, as if Republicans don't have daughters in sports, or constituents who have daughters in sports, as if this isn't like a real thing that we'd be concerned about and it's just for political gain. Um, but I thought that was an interesting thing for Eli to say, because I think the opposite is obviously true. That the inclusion of women's sports is about not just integrating, but changing society to force them to accept that trans women are women, and you have to deal with it. And that's why they're up in your face, that they're in the culture, they're in the sports, they're in the media, they're everywhere, because they want you to just shut up and take it and accept that this is already like a done deal. There's nothing you do about it. So even though they know that sports is physical, and it makes sense to not have, it totally makes sense for trans people to not be in, or trans women to be in women's sports. Totally makes sense. They can't do that because their ideology, there's too many other goals that it serves, having them in these different spaces, having them in front of different people, having, Tampax doing stuff with Dylan Mulvaney and other folks, having Alta doing stuff with these people. There's too many other cultural advantages in their hierarchy of power. And if they, I think one of the reasons, gosh, there's too much to kind of talk about with this point. I've mentioned it before, but I think the LGBT community is such a powerful tool for the left, especially because one of their big like foes is the evangelical right. And I think a way to restrict them in a lot of different ways is through things that would bump up against their religious liberties. And if they can silence them or use a law to bully them and harass them into submission or into irrelevance, then that's great for them, because then there's a lot of different power that they can assume. And they'll always just find a new group once they've like worn out their usefulness. They'll create one, I guess. But it's all just a tool for power. It really is. And so I think a lot of with this trans stuff, they're trying to see who will comply and just shut up. And the whole like pronoun thing is one thing. Like, are you willing to throw away reality to pledge fealty to these folks? Like, will you bend the knee? Back to like the Game of Thrones reference. Will you bend the knee to their ideology and throwing up your pronouns and saying that Dylan is a woman and Eli is a woman, to go ahead and go that extra mile to say that you are letting these people know that at the very least you're willing to play ball with them. And when they know that about the people who are willing to not play ball with them, like people like me who are like, no, that's a man, those are the people that they have to aggressively attack, because they are a threat to their overall agenda and their overall plans. So we got to make sure that we push back and we keep fighting, and other people are willing to stand up and say something, because they are like a minority, but there's so many like in the sphere of culture and entertainment that it kind of seems like this is the way that things are going, and that maybe you're not a majority, that you are a minority, but that's not true. And if more people just speak up and say, I'm not a cis. I ain't a cis. Then more people will be able to squash this. But you got to be brave enough to say something. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please go to blackteennews.com, check out different content on my website, different videos and articles, etc. Please check out different books that I have, different merch that I have, like the Roe and Casey Aborted. I also have all these Club XX lifetime membership stuff, like Sex Woman, different stuff that you guys can get at blackteennews.com. Again at the end, but want to encourage you guys to do that and check out my pro-life videos. God bless you. I'll see you next time.